Have you ever wished you could eavesdrop on a conversation with a millionaire? My name is Michelle Thompson. I'm a retired project controls engineer and business professor, and that's exactly what I'm going to do in this podcast. I get to ask the questions that everyone else wishes they could. I'm going to find out exactly how they were able to build their empires through automation and outsourcing. And I'm going to break it down in a way that helps you build your business to run on autopilot. Don't miss out on Automate to Dominate. Hello, everybody. And today we have Dr. Paul Gaskell on. He is a prior academic professor and currently has transitioned into the conservatory side of things, but also has an entrepreneurial side. So we want to talk to him actually about both of those. Paul, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I mean, I'll give you the bullet points, so not too long, because I've done a few different things in life. But yeah, as you said, I started out in academia. I'm a freshwater biologist by training and by inclination, I guess. And I spent maybe about 10 years after my PhD doing sort of primary research, applied research into the impacts of various pollutants on rivers and streams. But then towards the end of that, I had an opportunity to join a kind of a hands-on habitat conservation charity called the Wild Trout Trust. I guess the nearest equivalent you might be familiar with in North America would be Trout Unlimited. It's kind of a similar organization to that. And then beyond that, I sort of started to become, well, I guess interested in creating some assets for myself that would continue to pay me even if I'm not working. So understanding, sort of turning some of my passions, some of my interests into what is hopefully useful information for other people as well, so they could benefit from some of the things that I've learned across the various experiences. My academic life and my sort of hobbies and passions are very much intertwined. So I've been a mad keen angler since I could walk. And that it really, if I'm honest, the reason that I ended up being a freshwater biologist was because it was kind of like being a fisherman. So it was like the next closest thing that I could sort of be semi-respectable and be paid for. But now I'm just kind of casting off the shackles of any respectability and just going straight for the main event and just doing what I enjoy, and then hopefully carrying people along the ride on that. And it does offer as well a degree of additional security, because I'm aware that my salaried job could potentially disappear, changing in funding structures and funding streams. I'm sort of relying on somebody else's handout to kind of to provide for me and that kind of thing. And I wasn't really comfortable with that lack of resilience. So I figured I'd better work out how to do this kind of marketing and selling thing. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's, kind of what this podcast is all about. It's not the quick fix, but it's the create something once and then it pays you forever type deal, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So you actually just wrote another book, and I'm going to let you say the whole title, but so Rediscovering Fly Fishing, correct?
Yeah. So it's rediscovering a particular character within fly fishing. He was a very interesting, a very accomplished guy. It turned out he was a surgeon, and I think he ended up being stationed in India. He was born in the southwest of England, and he had quite an interesting life. So there's aspects of his biography, but also there's this kind of forgotten manuscript that he wrote, and I thought it was fantastic. It contains a lot of really useful, very practical, very high-level information. A lot of stuff that fly fishers from today have probably forgotten or never even knew. And yet this manuscript was sort of was left relatively anonymously and undiscovered. So I've tried to bring that to a new audience. And part of the the mechanism, or the way that I can do that in a quite a time efficient manner, is that I've actually included his original manuscript within the book. So as well as adding interpretations and the information and diagrams and explanations and sometimes a glossary of terms, because some quite strange language going on there, it's allowed me to present that in a new light, but at the same time, I've not had to write sort of 200 pages from scratch because I'm using a manuscript from the late 1800s that's out of copyright and bringing that to a new audience. But I've not had to do all of the legwork myself. I mean, I've got into some fairly crazy stuff, but I mean, we can get to that later on. But the essence is that it's finding something that's interesting, is valuable, and is not being brought to an audience, but not necessarily having to create that from scratch. So that was the idea with that particular book. And I have a copy here, as you might expect. So yeah, it's Fly Fishing Master H.C. Cutcliffe rediscovered in The Art of Trout Fishing in Rapid Streams. And The Art of Trout Fishing in Rapid Streams was his original book. And then I've got this photography and all sorts of things that go in there to kind of spice that up as well.
So that is super niche. Like, I mean, that's like so narrow, which is awesome because the more narrow you get, typically the better results that you have. Do you find, in England, is there a huge audience for that? Have you sold it worldwide? How many, copies of the book have you sold? And
so right now it's kind of starting small but building out. But and we're also in the position of we're changing from something that's even more niche than that, believe it or not, to something that is a little bit more broad sort of appeal. But it's because I don't have like a really established brand in that sort of the general fly fishing audience yet. The first print run that we did, I think we sold about 300 copies, something like that. But it's a good sort of price point book. So it's it's like a $35 book. So it's a nice kind of coffee table size. So that's certainly enough to get us off to the races. But my intention for it is, and I've already secured a couple of outlets that are going to sell it on our behalf, so that I don't necessarily have to do all the marketing for that. I'm also going to leverage the sort of Amazon's search engines by creating the Kindle version of that, so that I can promote and I can advertise that. I can use pay-per-click on Amazon to drive that. But what I've seen so far is that people coming cold to it, the conversion rate is really good. People seem to want to hear the story, and I think within that highly targeted niche, which again it has advantages because when you are targeting that advertising or the promotion of it, it's very easy to identify who your target audience is and to put it in front of those people. Right. And so far so good that the uptake and the response and the reviews and the feedback is really good. But I'm just at the stage now where we're sort of starting to drive that a bit more. And one of the intentions is to go to sort of industry targeted podcasts and to do interviews about the contents of the book rather than the process of creating the book and selling it. And that, again, that ought to lead to more exposure and just kind of snowball from there. But we're right at the bottom of the curve just now. But I think it's early signs are good. I think it's not been a hard push to sort of persuade people that this is worthwhile thing to have, because it's quite an intriguing story. Even if nothing else, there's a great story behind it, which obviously helps to to get people hooked in with the curiosity sort of side of things. Absolutely.
So what was the systems behind it? Like, how did you? Most people have a very hard time, everybody can start something, but actually getting it completed, right? So how did you start from point A and actually get it all the way to I'm finished writing, and then I had to find a publisher, and then I had to market, and then I had to tell us all the background stuff?
So to do that, a little bit of context. That this book came together, I started writing it and then sort of went through that whole process. It probably went from 0 to actually hitting the printers within about 12 to 14 weeks. So it's like quite a quick sort of turn. But I could only do that because I'd gone through a previous process of self-publishing a previous book. How to Fool Fish with Simple Flies, available in all good bookstores. That probably took me about 2 years to do that first one, because I was learning everything from scratch. And I actually went through the process for the first book of working with a very good local or relatively local independent printers who also did the design and the layout and the typesetting and that kind of thing for me. And the way that we actually bankrolled that was that we did a promotion, a launch, which is pretty close to sort of Jeff Walker's, product launch formula type format, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But we did that on a pre-order basis so that we generated the interest, the curiosity. We realized that it was probably had enough critical mass to do that. And then because we pre-sold, we knew how many copies we would need to order so that we didn't end up with like a massive, my bedroom full of unsold stock, essentially, and also no means to pay the printers.
Right.
But sorry, go on.
No, that's okay. Like if you had mentioned Jeff Walker's book Launch, right? And there was a guy that did that. He created a board game and then bought 5,000 board games without pre-selling anything. And he literally had them in his closet, in his kid's bathroom, and no way to pay for them. And I think he sold like 14 games? Like it was something insane.
It was like a really low. No, I remember the story very well in the book, because again, stories are like great things for retaining that sort of stuff. But
right. But that's huge. How did you find the independent publisher, and then how did you set up the process to be able to pre-sell?
So part of that process was, initially it was the publishing side of things. That was purely networking, and it was people that I'd taken actually guiding. I'd guided them as fly fishing clients. They were independently successful businessmen. It's like, oh, hey, we have these kind of business breakfasts, and one of the guys on the, across the table from me, he runs his own publishing and printing company. So you guys should hook up and talk. So we did, and that's basically what happened. But what I've since evolved, so I'm going to break it down in several parts, otherwise I'll get off track. So knowing how and what to do in terms of the launch, that came from initially I read a book called, it's about email persuasion or something like that, which is a guy called Ian Brody wrote that, a British guy. That was my first introduction to the idea of email marketing, and basically the idea of creating value so that your audience is happy and ready to keep opening your communications from you, whether or not they contain a sort of a pitch or a sales message or whatever else. And that book, when you sort of obviously start to see the maths behind that and how that works, it's very convincing, very persuasive. Like, yeah, this is obviously the way forward. So that was probably the first step was Ian Brody's book. Then that led on to the idea of product launches and the idea that you have this sideways sales letter. You don't have to smash it out of the park with like a Dan Kennedy or a John Carlton sort of one page, direct response advert in a magazine, which takes a lot of skill and a lot of trial and error and a lot of balls as well, to be honest, to put your money behind that.
And a lot of money to figure it out.
Yeah,
right.
But you better have deep enough pockets to ride through to fail fast enough times to then hit that winner. So the idea of having that sideways sales letter from Jeff Walker's stuff really appealed to me, and following that just relatively step by step and doing that allowed us to sell a few things like some DVDs and some video products that we had as part of our blog. So I should probably say, I started the first blog in 2012, but I had zero idea about SEO or anything like that. I was just writing it because it was something I was interested in. So, it was just out there. I didn't really even do it for any money initially. It's the only reason that it kind of transitioned into that was it ended up taking up so much of my time that it's like, well, actually this has to start paying its own way. Otherwise I can't do it. And then, people that read that don't benefit from it if I, have to stop doing it. So there was sort of a bit of a need or a push to be able to learn how to do that sort of stuff as well, which and that ultimately is what led me to doing the Ian Pribble's stuff with the free, or I forgot what's the first time internet profits is the current acronym for that. But this, brilliant stuff, and that really completed some of the major gaps that I'd had in the sort of marketing side of things, because I really had an email list before I had a consistent means of generating and maintaining those subscriptions and those subscribers. Because initially when I started out, it was real easy to go onto a fly fishing forum discussion board and just get subscribers from there, because it's that organic reach isn't or wasn't crushed by Facebook algorithms only showing it to a small percentage of your audience and that kind of thing. On those forums, you just had pretty much unlimited access, and it was real easy to generate subscribers even without a website. So I had a list before I ever had really a website and a solid base for that traffic. But as all these things, nothing stays the same. Those forums that eventually over time they bled members, and those members ended up in Facebook rather than on those particular forums. So the place for our audience to hang out together changed, and then the rules of that sort of changed as well. That's part of the process in terms of learning how to do the promoting things via email, using that kind of sideways sequential sales letter, warming people up by helping them before you ask for money from them, and then if they can decide whether your stuff's kind of worthwhile or not, and then obviously leading them to the point where if they want to take the next step, then we exchange money for whatever it is, the DVD, the short course, whatever it might be. So that's how we got to that first foot in the door, and also that first practical demonstration that kind of selling could work, and was it wasn't just like a hope marketing exercise where you make something that you find cool and then it just kind of completely nosedives and you end up losing a lot of money. So that was, you have to prove that to yourself. I think that it can work and you can do it, even if it works for other people. The fact that it works for you and your audience as well is, I think that's a crucial step to take and to understand.
And so it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you now have multiple streams of income just from this journey that you've gone on, because you have, you mentioned a DVD that you created, several books, right? That are all passive income now. And then you also have, following Ian's method, a website that now has, is driving traffic, building your email list, as well as, partially maybe some affiliate links on that website or something like that. Did I hear that correctly? Yeah.
That's right. And there are, yes, I'm careful that I want to diversify those streams of income so that they're less vulnerable to any shift in algorithm changes or charges for particular platforms or whatever it is, so that we've got more than one stream of income. I can get deeper into the tactics of how I've kind of spread that risk, particularly with self-published book material. If you'd like,
I would love. That's what we want to hear, man.
Okay, so let's follow the timeline then. So the first book took me about 2 years to create. Got very, very good reviews amongst the audience that bought it. That led on to the second print book. There's other stuff going on in between time. I mean, don't get me wrong, that the progress is far from straight. I'm veering between different shiny objects or dead ends, or, investing in my own kind of learning and sort of stalling on the process along the way. But in terms of the print book trajectory, the next thing after that second book, which we launched just before Christmas, and that did pretty well for us, was then I was able to then create a further 2 books. They're much smaller, more sort of pocket guides, kind of almost like I guess an old-fashioned DVD case sort of size would be the trim size of the book for those. One of them is about 130 pages, another one's maybe 60 or 70 pages, so quite different style of book. But those 2 things came out. I think they came out 9 days apart. So, and the first one took me less than a month to create, and then the second one took just shy of 2 weeks to kind of get that shorter book out there as well. Now, the only reason I can do that is that rather than basically, I took the first print book that I had professionally laid out. I then went through and understood enough of the design concepts for me to then go and buy myself a very cheap, very reasonably priced desktop publishing software. It's made by a company called Serif, and it cost about $25 or something like that. So it's like way cheaper than your regular sort of Adobe sort of products or whatever whatever else you might be out there. So no risk at all in terms of financial outlay for buying that program. And then just spent maybe a week learning how to use that and how to recreate the effects and the sort of the styles and the design elements that you'd see in the professionally laid out book. That then gave me a lot of power because it cost me, I think it was about, what would it be in dollars? Maybe about $1,500, $1,600 to have the layout of the first book done. And then plus whatever, the printing costs were to produce that. The only reason, or the main reason now that this is especially viable is that as it used to be CreateSpace, it's now Amazon KDP, that started life as a Kindle publishing platform. They now also do paperbacks and print books, and crucially, they do print on demand, and they do copies. They print copies on demand, and will send them to you at the unit price for whether it's one or whether it's 999 copies. Is the same, and it's also it's a few pence more than what we were paying if we had a print run of 500 or 600 or more done at the still reasonably priced printers. So there's kind of a massive economy of scale that Amazon's able to leverage to be able to print those off in small numbers or whatever numbers you want. And also the other thing that is incredible about that is that it also leverages the Amazon shipping network, so that the delivery, we were paying sort of up to $200, $300, or sometimes maybe, over £300. So what, $400 or so in delivery costs for a shipment of 500 books, because like books are really heavy, and they're bulk. These ones are, sort of coffee table size, trim size. So the shipping cost to us, even before we'd ship them out to the customers, was considerable. But now with that Amazon print on demand, that KDP service, it solves that at a stroke. And the other thing it does is it allows you to have them printed locally. So I can send them to a reseller in the States, and they will be printed in America and shipped within America, so that there's no problem with the imports or delays in the shipping. It's super fast, and it also is unbelievably cheap to ship them, particularly for these heavy, big full color books. So that was really a step change, was to be able to use KDP to create that. And so that time invested, that 2 years invested in creating that first book, and then the time invested in learning how to recreate that in my own desktop publishing software, it now means I've got templates for different sized books. So the big books, they're color printed. The smaller books, we go black and white because the printing is much cheaper, and it's a different genre of book anyway. And so there's just layers of kind of you can really control it and really sort of get big benefits and big differences in the cost of your production, the cost of your distribution, by just understanding the mechanics of that. Here's the crazy thing. The cost of printing, so it's a double-edged sword. If you're going to go color, it doesn't matter if you're on KDP, which is the Amazon platform. If you're going to have one color image in your book, you get charged color for the whole rest of your book, because they can't take it off one machine and put it on another one. That doesn't work for them, and you can see why that is. So what that means is, once you're in the territory of thinking, well, this needs to be a color book, then the great thing is, the way that you get that back is that it doesn't matter what trim size it is, how big those pages are. It's just a cost per page. So it'll cost you the same to have a little novel-sized trim size versus the big sort of coffee table format. So it's just a per-page cost. So if you're going to go like color photographs, and
go big or go home.
Yeah, you just go for that glossy, the kind of book you sit down with a glass of wine and you really enjoy sort of like looking at the photos as much as reading the text, right? And the cost is just the same per page. So you might as well go big. And that obviously, because you go bigger, it reduces the page count. So that, it kind of trades off and it brings your cost down a bit as well in that respect. So I've got these margins and all the things that you need to conform to go. You got to jump through a few hoops to have, to get your PDF up there so they can print it in the way that works. And they have a quality control process that it's like a 2-step thing. There's an automated one that flags up any really obvious things, like you've gone way outside the lines of where, you're actually allowed to print. And then there's like a manual check. So a human actually looks at it and kind of goes through it. But they turn that around super fast. So that's how you can go from idea to creating a PDF to actually having it on sale and available. As soon as it's available on Amazon, you can order your own author copies, or you can have those sent to your resellers or whatever it is. So the key thing really is to go through the process at least once for the different trim sizes and formats, and then you just have that as a template. So once those templates are there, with the margins, everything, the trim size all set up correctly, you can then just drag any content that you've created anywhere else, and then it's a cut and paste job to sort of reformat it. So one of the ways that I've been able to create books and publish them very quickly is to combine and aggregate related knowledge and information from emails that I've sent out on a particular subject as part of, just as part of engaging with my list and giving value to my list, of blog posts that I've researched and spent time drafting that and nailing that sort of down. Okay, there's a bit of wordsmithing involved to stitch the two things together, but it's a hell of a lot quicker than it is to sit down and write it de novo, sitting down with a blank page in front of you and trying to write it from scratch. That's a tough gig. But that, it inspires you, in fact, to create some of that content where it doesn't necessarily immediately create income for you, which sometimes you're sort of thinking, damn, I could spend an afternoon here, I could make another video and I'll have something to sell. But then you forget that you need to do at least as much work again, if not more, to actually promote and then sell that thing that you're creating. So the idea that at some point in the future you can draw on that pool of stuff and then repackage it as a print book, which is a very different offering from some digital media, and also from drawing it from several different sources and different areas of your life or your experience. It means it's unlikely that if you've got the kind of super fan that's actually followed each and every individual piece and they've managed to engage so diligently with your email communications that every single one of your emails always lands in their inbox and they always read it, because there's always that battle for deliverability on email. So it's unlikely that any one individual has seen all of that content before anyway. And even if they have, that probably means they're such super fans that they'd be fighting over themselves to actually order it in print format anyway. So you can't, it's a good way of making sure people actually get that value. You've gone to the effort of creating that value for someone, and it's a great way of making sure that they actually have access to it and they get to experience it.
That's awesome advice. And I think so many people forget that most of us have this whole database of stuff that we've done before, and we just kind of forget about it when it's like a sitting gold mine, just waiting for us to do something with it, to repurpose it.
Yeah, and I even in all of our stuff, whether it was within DVD stuff or any content or whatever, I always say, if I used a photograph, let's say I used a really nice photograph in a blog post, I used to be of the mindset where, I've kind of blown that. I can't use that now in my DVDs or in my print books because I should have kept my powder dry because that was a really nice shot. But actually, it's that, and also particularly the important messages that for tuition or, for coaching and that kind of thing, that actually improves and increases in value with repetition, because expecting people to get that as a one-shot deal and then move on as if, oh yeah, nailed that, got it, understand it's more important, the other points. If something's important or if something's particularly inspiring, if it's an image, then showing that several times is reassuring people that that is something to pay attention to, that is valuable, and that's what you want, people to take home from that particular experience. So I actually think it goes the other way. Your instinct is that you want to protect that sort of those assets, and you don't want to let them go out there for free, or that you can't reuse them if they have been out there for free. But actually reiterating, rephrasing, I guess it's that rule of 7, that you need to see or hear or experience something about 7 times before it really impacts you and affects your behavior or your understanding or whatever it is. So you're actually giving people less value if you try and do a fresh, new, different thing every time, and that you give them like a one-shot lesson and expect them to get that. And I think I've proven that to my own satisfaction. So, take it or leave it. But, I'd suggest that it can save you from an awful lot of legwork and being a complete perfectionist about creating something from scratch every single time and assuming that people find that more valuable, when actually they probably get more out of a little bit of gentle repetition and something that's familiar to them as well. So, yeah.
And I mean, Dr. Paul, you're not a perfectionist at all, so I don't understand. For those of you who are just picking up on this, Paul and I might be friends, and I might know that he's a bit of perfectionist.
Yeah, and again, that's possibly one of the reasons I flag it up, is that it's easy to get down a rabbit hole and to sort of take something too far, when actually, good enough is good enough, and also that sometimes good enough is better than the alternative. But at the same time, it's handy to do something to an extreme level, because it means it gives you confidence that nothing's ever going to be too difficult for you, because you've done difficult things that you didn't understand before, and it turned out that obsessing about them for a bit managed to solve it. I forget who said it, but there was somebody far brighter than me in history said something like that there's no problem so great that it can withstand a period of sustained thought. So that's sort of the philosophy I take on things, is there's probably a way to do something if it needs done. So, yeah.
Yeah. So let's say, hypothetically, you and I meet in a pub, and I find out that you know how to publish books, and I have this great hobby that I want to turn into Amazon Kindle book, and I want to start to turn that into income. What piece of napkin notes would you give me as 3 steps to point me in the right direction to get me going?
So, first of all, you need to decide whether it's primarily text or whether it's going to be like a pictorial guide type thing, because that has fairly significant implications on how you go with the digital and the print formats. And you really need both. If you're gonna use Amazon to its full extent, you need to have both.
Now, when you say both, you mean an ebook and a print book, or
yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. So you need the digital version. You need to leverage Kindle. And then you need to have the print book as well. People are still attached to print. People love print books more than digital. Digital's super convenient, and it does sell more, and I think it is kind of climbing up there, but there's so many more print books in the world than there are digital books even now.
What about audio? Is it easy to make an audiobook once you have a print book?
I mean, you can put, if you have a reasonable income stream, you can audition people. There's people that will do that professionally for you. And that's obviously great for, your theme of sort of, being able to automate and to be able to, outsource stuff. That's an ideal example for that, because there's people that are set up to do that. Now, because we happen to have to do sound engineering for our DVDs, and he's got a background in sound engineering and sound production, audio production, should I say. We can do that ourselves, and it's a case of us sitting down and reading into a mic for a period of time. So we can do that. You should definitely do that, because it gives you another thing on the back end of Amazon's funnel that they can sell. So if you ever end up doing Amazon pay-per-click stuff, there's more of a chance that you can get an upsell to the audio as well, and that'll get you more return on your advertising dollars. So you should definitely do that. If you have the means, either technically or, a few $100s spare to pay somebody to sit down and read it, then you should definitely do that, for sure. But I would say if that's a bit scary for you, you can definitely get a long way on a shoestring budget by doing the Kindle ebook version and the print version. And so I said that the first decision, as I said, is that you need to decide whether it's primarily text or whether it's going to have a lot of diagrams or pictures that are important to go with particular layouts, and the appearance is important. And the reason I say that is for a primarily text-based thing where there's maybe one or two diagrams, but it's okay if it's just broadly anchored to the text somewhere in the same region, is you can set that to a reflowing format, which is what they prefer on Kindle, which means that when people pinch zoom and resize it, it reflows and repaginates all of that text so that, the bigger the font size, the more the page number is. Now, for pictorial based books that with text, so that your classic sort of textbook type thing or your pictorial guide, reflowing text is a disaster unless you're probably someone who's amazing at coding could probably make it work, but that's not me. So I'd rather, done is better than perfect. So that what you need to do, what we've done is that the way I derived the trim size for our smaller books was that it matches roughly a 7-inch tablet screen, so that I can set up the Kindle version as a print replica, which is it's just a box that you tick. It's not complicated. You could sit down and work it out without me even describing how to do that. But you set it up as a print replica PDF, which is the pages are set. But what you need to do, if you've got a big 8-inch by 10-inch format print book, you need to reformat that into a sort of a 7 by 5 inch or 5 by 7-inch format, but it needs to be fixed. So that has an implication on how you set those two things up. But if you have templates for both of those trim sizes in your desktop publishing, you've done it once. Once you've done that once, it's relatively easy to just drag things around and just drag and drop and resize things and put it where it needs to be. Not an onerous process, but quite tedious. But you can get it done in a fairly short period of time, or you can pay someone to do it. Clearly, if your time is worth more than that, and you have somebody that can do it for a cheaper price than your hourly rate, you should outsource it. Absolutely. So that then gives you two things. It gives you end up with a print book for that, and you also end up with a Kindle book. Now, the important thing about having a Kindle book is that you can offer that on various promotions, and you can also have it in the Kindle online lending library, where people sign up for that for a fixed fee on Amazon, and then you get like a few pence if somebody reads several pages of it for free. They don't pay any more to read your book. But what that does is Amazon will start pushing that out to their subscribers. When they say things like, so many reads for 99 cents on this, da-da-da-da, whatever it is, they'll start emailing people and sort of giving push notifications to people about your book. And I can see it on my sort of, reporting data from Amazon, KDP. There'll be a spike where they've obviously been pushing it on Kindle Online Library and Kindle Unlimited. And then after that, you get a rash of sales of either of the ebook, but also of the print book. And then we make a much bigger margin on the print book than we do on the ebook, because they constrain your pricing quite tightly in order for you to get the 70% royalties from the ebook side of things. You have to price it between, I forget, it's about $2.99 and about $9.99, something like that. If you stray outside of that, then you only get 35% commission. And the thing they don't tell you, that they bury in the small print, is that there is a fulfillment cost. So the more color photos and more pages you've got on a Kindle product, they actually charge you more from that. So that's why your royalties often deviate from that 70% thing. It depends on, it's actually not the per page, it's actually the file size. So you have to get good at riding that picture compression tightrope, so it's still good quality, but it's not, that file is as small as possible so that you don't get absolutely caned on the delivery cost that Kindle puts out there. But basically, if your Kindle book is acting as the widest end of your funnel, the idea is that you get people to buy that print book through that. So onto the slightly not advanced, but it's hard won sort of knowledge, really. Because we also sell on different platforms and we sell digital products, whether they're membership sites where it's like a short course where people get to log into that and consume ebooks and video material and audiobooks, or it might be just a straight download of an ebook. There's a stipulation in the KDP contract that if you want that 70% royalty, you have to give them exclusive rights to sell that ebook in Kindle Unlimited. Now you can enroll in that for a period of time. You have to go in for like a minimum of 12 weeks, but you can continually drop it in and out of that if you want. But what we tend to do is to create slightly different versions, or we might do a compilation version as an ebook that we sell off our own platform and our own website. And then the version that you get in Amazon is a different book. So it would qualify for a different ISBN number if you were sort of publishing it like that. So even if someone was able to kind of piece together the same sort of material elsewhere, there isn't basically what they don't want is people just price comparing and looking across to other platforms rather than buying it off Amazon. So you just make the thing on Amazon unique and you're good to go. But that doesn't mean that content is lost to you in terms of selling it in other places. You just have to be sure that it's different enough that it doesn't qualify as the same thing. So we use a platform called Gumroad, which is actually very good because it allows you, there's no bandwidth limitation. So we sell HD videos, and most of those platforms that allow you to sell and to market HD videos, they charge you for bandwidth, and they absolutely cane you for that as well because storage is so expensive. But Gumroad's amazing. It just says, right, no limit. You just sell what you can sell. And also you can give away free copies, and if you do that, you don't get charged for that either. So you can do some very good promotional stuff on that. So we tend to end up with our ebooks on Gumroad. They tend to be embedded within our Kartra membership products, and they also tend to live on Amazon as well. And of course, the pages inside those books cross-link to our other products and our website and that kind of thing as well. So even if we're not making a lot of money from an ebook, it's sending traffic to our site, or it's subscribing people to an email list, or it's pitching another product directly. So we're leveraging those search engine optimizations for the titles and the descriptions that you put in your book to then get, acquire a customer in another part of your business as well. But as I say, in terms of making the money, because you can print those copies and sell, there's no restriction on where you sell your print copies, so you don't have to make a different print version that you sell on different platforms. So that the identical print book that you can sell on Amazon, you can have author copies sent to yourself, or you can have them printed locally and shipped to people that are selling for you overseas. That's all good. And if you've got an audiobook version of that, so much the better, because as I say, you just get those upsells and that sort of bigger return on the back end.
Awesome. That's amazingly helpful. Because I wouldn't even know where to speak. I wouldn't even know where to start. So. I
think that's it. I mean, so I've probably spent around about 3 years getting to that point, but now I've done that. It's not that hard. It's just a time investment, a self-training, a self-improvement process. But once you're there and you have those skills, it becomes quite easy for you as an individual, and it's something that can be quite valuable to other people. So, it might be that, say, for whatever reason, I can't make money in something else. I know that I can, I could publish books for other people and get commissions and do affiliate sales and whatever else on that. So I may, if I ever get time, I might even create an online course for how to do this stuff, how to self-publish on a shoestring budget. And some of those tips that I've just given out there would certainly be, within that. But it wouldn't be that difficult to create a course where you provide those templates and those margins and those hard-won sort of practical settings that it sort of feels like you're beating your head against the wall to set them up for the first time. But once you've got them, they're a great asset because you just drag things in there, send it off, you go through the review process. You know that your templates will let you fly through that review process, so that happens quickly and you don't get a dozen revisions backwards and forwards before they approve it.
So that brings up a great question. Let's say somebody had a question and they wanted to get a hold of you. How could they do that?
So the best email address for me is paulgaskellflyfishing@gmail.com. That's the most kind of universal one. But if in doubt, you can go to our newest website, which is fishingdiscoveries.com. And there's a contact form on there, as you'd expect from a website. But you can also subscribe on, we have 2 YouTube channels. We have Discover Tenkara is one of our YouTube channels. The other one is going to be Fishing Discoveries as well. And then also, we have Facebook groups. I have a Facebook presence. I'm Paul Gaskell on Facebook. And if there's a ton of fish pictures associated with my profile, you've probably got the right dude. But the spelling is the only tricky thing, I suppose, on the email, and it's Gaskell, because a lot of people want to put ILL at the end because it sounds more sensible, and probably is. But there you go. We're just awkward like that.
Those dang Brits.
Yeah.
Okay, so we kind of talked about this before we started, but don't be hitting Paul up for a whole bunch of free information. So he has an hourly rate. So if it's something that you want, some information, you want him to mentor you, get a hold of him and he'll be very happy to let you know about that. So, and he's a nice guy, but don't take advantage of him being nice. So everybody. All right. Awesome. Paul, this has been absolutely amazing. I think you've definitely given enough information that if somebody wanted to go down this road, you gave them way more information to be able to be dangerous and get it done. So anything else that you would pop in and add as closing remarks?
Just to thank you so much for having me on and for allowing me to geek out on this stuff, because it's a great outlet. But yeah, seriously, thank you for taking the time and asking such great questions. And let's do it again sometime. Oh yeah, that sounds awesome. And thank you again for the time. I really appreciate it. And so for everybody who doesn't know, in the microbiology world, Paul is a god. So he's even got his own chapter in a biology book. So it's very impressive on brown trout. You guys should look it up. So all right. Thank you so much, Paul. And we will catch you guys next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Automate to Dominate podcast at www.awesomeoutsourcing.com/podcast. My name is Michelle Thompson.